Traders, welcome back to Alareso Capital. On today's video, we're going to go through the weekly watch list and we're also going to take a look at the market. Remember guys that this video is for informational purposes only, is based just on my personal opinion and is not financial advice. And remember guys that if at any point of this video you find any value, remember to subscribe to the channel, and that helps the channel a lot. We are starting to grow a little bit faster, which is actually pretty encouraging. And the good thing about it is that more people are finding this information valuable, which is the main purpose of the channel. So remember that guys, and of course, the expectation for this video is to create a high probability roadmap going into next week, looking at some of the best setups, and then of course looking at possible resistance and support levels, especially for the indexes, right? Remember that we tend to focus on the SPY. We're going to take a look at the SPY. We're going to take a look at some of the setups that I'm currently trading right now in which I have positions, and we're going to take it from there. Also, I didn't make a video last week, so we don't have anything to go back to, but it's pretty encouraging to see that this rally, the video that I made 2 weeks ago, right? We were talking about the possibility of this squeeze of the bears continuing, and you can see that basically, if we just take a look pretty quickly here at the SPY, we can basically see that we basically had a V-shaped recovery, squeezing all of the people that were shorting this market all the way down, and most likely all the people that were trying to short this market looking for a continuation and a leg to the downside, thinking that we were going to go into a crash. Remember guys that we were talking about the possibility of this market continuing to the upside, especially with the rate cuts coming. Most likely we tend to see, and this is actually pretty important, we tend to see usually what tends to be the pattern is that we tend to see rate cuts, and then we tend to see strong pullbacks in the market as soon as we start to see the rate cuts or we get really close to the rate cuts. However, that tends to be the pattern if the economy is entering into a recession. Now, if we don't go into a recession, and that's why the unemployment numbers right now are becoming very, very important for the market. You can see that most of the time that we're having CPI is not as important as the employment numbers. We are seeing this pattern that the employment numbers are becoming more volatile for the market because the market is shifting its focus towards not entering into a recession. So if we tend to see that pattern, then it's very likely that we will see a continuation of the rally. So that's going kind of into the macro. I usually just check the rates. I don't check at anything else. I usually just try to follow what the Fed is doing, looking at the probabilities of the rate cuts, and then seeing what is the narrative of the market. That's usually as much as I go, and then I just focus on price. So let's take a look at what the SPY is telling us right here. So this is actually looking pretty encouraging. You can see right here that we had this V-shaped recovery in the market. And now the question is, what is going to be the expectation for next week? I do think that the probability of a continuation is actually pretty high. And let me just jump into the SPX because I do have some levels there that I want to show you. Let me just hide this alert that I have right here. And what is actually interesting about the SPX is that we're starting to see some call activity all the way to 5,750. I do think that there's a really nice possibility that if we happen to get a daily close above this gap right here and we take out all these gap sellers, that we will see a continuation of the squeeze, and that first target is going to be 5,750. Now, you can see that I have an anchor VWAP anchor from this gap that we had on the 15, and this is something that I have found using the anchor VWAP. When we tend to have a gap and then we tend to have a continuation, that day tends to be a really important day at which you can anchor your VWAP. So it's basically like a gap in earnings, right? When you have a gap in earnings and then you have a continuation from that gap in a stock, you usually anchor your VWAP from that level, and then that VWAP tends to become really important. And it's the same with the index. As soon as you get a really strong gap and then you get continuation, that tends to become a really important level for us to look for possible support. So The SPX is holding that anchor VWAP for now, and I do think that there's a possibility of a move to the upside. In validation zone, I do think that as long as we continue to trade above this gap that we had at 5,500, as long as we continue to trade above that level, gamma continues to be positive, then the probability of a continuation to the upside is higher than just a failure and a move to the downside. So as long as we continue to hold that gap, most likely we will continue to go to the upside. And as long as we continue to hold this anchor VWAP, the possibility of a momentum move is going to increase as well. And that is kind of what I'm looking for here in the SPX. Now we take a look at the Qs. In comparison to the SPX, the Qs are lagging a little bit, but we can see kind of the same pattern. You can see right here that we had this gap right here. You can see that we had a nice move to the upside, and we're basically holding that anchor VWAP, and we are holding that 50 daily moving average. I don't know if the Qs are gonna go to all-time highs in the next couple of weeks, but I do think that there's a high probability of us filling this gap right here, especially if we are able to take out these sellers. I do think that there is a really nice possibility for a close of that gap, and kind of the same pattern, right? As long as the Qs continue to hold above this gap right here and above this good wall of 470, then most likely we will continue to see a continuation to the upside. If we hold this anchor VWAP, then most likely we're going to have that momentum move that we are talking about. So that's going to be it for the SPY and also for the QQQs. Now, what is really interesting is that we're seeing such a strong move in the IWM. And I really like what I'm seeing here because you can see that we had this strong move to the upside, right? Then we had this double top. We lost that 20 SMA, and then of course we had this really strong move to the downside. Found support at that 200 daily. And what is actually really interesting is that you can see right here how amazingly we had a really nice flag. Then we had a break to the upside, and you can see the same pattern. And let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better. You can see right here that we had the gap, we had that continuation to the upside, and you can see how amazing that anchor VWAP from the gap held, and then we had a really strong move to the upside. Now the question is, if we're gonna see more strength in the IWM than the Qs and the SPY. I do think that that's a little bit irrelevant. Just find a setup. If the setup is valuable, then as long as we continue to see a bull market, most likely it's going to work. Now, some things are going to trade better than other things. Yes. Just continue to focus on the setups. I'm going to share some of the setups that I'm watching. Most of them are in the mega cap territory, but the thing is about finding the patterns. So don't get too stressed up about finding the best sector or anything like that. Most things are going to move. I do think that right now we're seeing strength in basically everywhere, right? We're seeing strength in the financials, we're seeing strength back into the technology sector, which is lagging a little bit, right? If we take a look at the XLK, it's lagging a little bit, but we have a really nice shape, right? We have a really nice cup, a really nice handle that is forming. So I do think that most of the things are gonna move. Now, one sector that I really like is gonna be Bitcoin. Bitcoin is looking awesome. I do have a position in some of these crypto names, and I'm looking for Bitcoin for a possible move back into this trend line. That is probably going to take Bitcoin somewhere around 70,000. And I really, really like what I'm seeing here, right? You can see right here that we were finding a lot of resistance right here at this 50 daily moving average. And now we finally took it out. We had this really strong close. Now we're having a silent inside day candle, but this is looking pretty nice. As long as we continue to hold above this anchor VWAP that we have right here, and as long as we continue to hold the anchor VWAP from this day right here, I do think that buyers will continue to have the upper hand, and I'm looking for a continuation in these crypto names. So now let's take a look at some of the setups. That's kind of what I'm looking for the markets, and what I really like also is the UVXY. So the UVXY had that crazy move to the upside, and now you can see, if we zoom here a little bit, you can see right now that the UVXY is moving back below this anchor VWAP from this low right here. We had kind of that shakeout move with that pullback, but now we are back below that. So I do think that there's a possibility of the UVXY trading all the way back down to 20, and that will be pretty bullish for the markets overall. So now let's take a look at some of the setups that I'm going to be watching for next week. And you can take a screenshot, you can add these to your watch list if they fit your criteria, but these are some of the best names that I'm looking to trade right now. And the first one is going to be MSTR. So this one is already moving. I do have a position in MSTR. Really like what I'm seeing here. You can see that we were chopping, right? This was it was chopping pretty. It was a little bit annoying because I did have a position, then I closed it for a small profit on this day right here, and then I started my position again on Friday. But what is really interesting is that we continue to make those higher lows. And remember, guys, that we tend to talk about this pattern that as long as you're making higher lows into a possible level of resistance, that means that buyers are becoming more aggressive, and it's really easy to manage your risk when you tend to see those setups. And of course, Bitcoin was a really nice tell of this possible move to the upside. I did open my position at a pretty nice price, and now we're starting to see a little bit of a move. I think that this one is a little bit extended. I also have a position in coin. This one is a little bit better as long as you are able to grab some coin as close to that 20 SMA and also to that anchor VWAP from this last test of that we had at the 200. I do think that that's going to be a really nice price. So also looking for a move to the upside in this one. We did check the SPY. If you're looking to play the SPY, I do think that is actionable. The closer to the anchor VWAP, the better. It's going to be the same for the Qs. I'm also watching at the semiconductors, so let's take a look at the SMH first before taking a look at that one. So the semiconductors are lagging a little bit, but you can make money with this pattern, and that's what really matters in the market. You can see right here that we had kind of this V shape. We're seeing this cup, we're seeing this handle, and what I really like is that we're also holding this anchor VWAP. If we happen to get a really nice move above that 50 daily moving average and perhaps Nvidia, remember that we have Nvidia earnings next week, then perhaps that is going to be the catalyst for the semiconductors to close this gap right here. So one of my favorite names in that sector is going to be TSM. So I started my position in TSM somewhere near the close. So you are seeing here that we had that close above that 50 daily moving average. Really nice handle. So also looking for some upside in TSM. And then one of my favorite names in the mega cap sector is going to be Meta right here. If we jump quickly to that weekly chart, you can see that Meta is trading near all-time highs, and you can see right here that we have a really nice base. So if we happen to see a breakout in Meta, I do think that we're gonna see actually a pretty powerful move. So I'm looking for that. Right, you can see right here that Meta is holding this anchor VWAP right here. If we happen to get another move back above that 5 daily SMA, then I do think that we're gonna see some continuation to the upside. And most of the setups are gonna be pretty similar, right? I do have the XLK. I like to trade the XLK using the TECL, which is basically the 3x leverage ETF. I tend to find that some of the best moves you can use the leverage ETFs from the ETF itself. Really helps me. And then of course looking at Spotify, this is one that I really like for next week, right? Spotify is looking amazing here. So you can see right here that we're holding that anchor VWAP from this low right here. And as long as we remain trading above that 20 SMA and above those anchor VWAPs, then you can allow Spotify to chop a little bit. But looking basically for a retest of these highs, we do have a call wall at 360. So I do think that that is going to be a really nice trade for next week. And then finally, Apple. Apple is forming pretty nicely here. You can see that Apple is trading pretty tightly, right around this 225 level. And I do think that Apple is most likely heading to new all-time highs. So that's basically it for the video, guys. I do think that the market is setting up for a continuation to the upside. One of my favorite sectors will continue to be the crypto names. MSTR and Coin are among my favorites, but I do think that we're going to see kind of a rally that is going to extend basically across most of the sectors. So I do think that there's a lot of value in the semiconductors still. And of course, if you want to trade the IWM looking for some small caps, I do think that you can do that as well. But remember that the most important thing is looking at the patterns, and some of the mega caps are also forming some really nice patterns. So thank you so much guys for your time. I will see you on future videos. Have an amazing weekend. Take care and bye bye.